Welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, let's talk about money and connecting with it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hey, I wanted to talk about this resource that that I can think of at least, never in our history and in human history has there been a resource that has been more abundant, more available, yet thought of as more limited, scarce, lack of availability, and harder to get throughout widespread culture than money is today. I think on average, if you ask people that are the commonality of American culture, certainly, and I would suspect through most other cultures, when asked like how difficult is it to get money, they would say yes, it's very difficult, especially to get it in any sort of significant sums. And the interesting thing is there has never been more money available in our entire history. And I'm not talking just about like inflation and everything. Like our governments are literally printing billions of dollars to flush out into our economy in order to help spur it, save it, whatever. I'm not an economist, but I know that to be a fact. But it's so fascinating how we continue to have this mindset about money, specifically the dollar bills, the $100 bills, whatever it is, pick your currency, 50s, 20s, that it's so difficult to get in any sort of abundance. And that those, again, I'm kind of making a little bit of a generalization there, but those that have abundance of it have done something, or they just, done something that maybe is not normal or not achievable by the average everyday person, or they just got extremely lucky, right? The person that invented the coat hanger, some crazy invention that they just struck it rich with. But the thing about it is our job as consumers, our job as employees, our job as average everyday citizens of whichever country you're from, our job is not to create money. Our job is not to develop and invent new ways to create money. The money is there. It's created. Our job is to connect with it. Our job is to find it, find the people that have it, the companies that have it, and it could be, if I got $1 from every person on the planet, I'd be okay with that. If I got a penny from every person on the planet, I'd be okay with that, right? There are different ways to look at it. But what people don't kind of put together in their brain is that your job is not to create money. By going to work for a paycheck, if that is you are not creating money. You may be getting money, but you're not creating it. Even the company that you work for is not creating money. And if that is you as the business owner, you have to understand that your company, your service that you offer, the product that you offer, whatever it is that you use to have revenue. See, I even said it, to create revenue, you're not creating money. You are connecting with it. And that's the title, right? Is money, and that our job is to connect with money. And what does that mean? You may be saying like, okay, that's such a nuanced distinction, but it really isn't. Because once you change your mindset that my job is not to create something from nothing, even gardeners, they don't create plants from nothing. They have to plant a seed and they do things, water, fertilizer, soil, sunshine, blah, 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 blah. I'm not a green thumb, whatever. Most plants that we raise end up dying, but they connect all these different aspects to the seed, and then the seed grows and produces its fruit or crop or whatever it is. But you have to understand that our actions that we take on a daily basis, again, as an employee, as a business owner, whatever your role is, your job is to connect with that money. And certainly if you are the business leader, the business owner, your job is to connect your services with other people's resources, i.e. their money, in order to make that exchange. And then you get that exchange. That's what capitalism is all about. But it's the same thing as an employee. My job is not to create hours that I provide to my employer. My job is to connect my services in the form of the work I perform to their resources, right? And it's this kind of chain. Like they get resources from their customers, they know that they can pay you, and it all is this big line of connection. But once you make that switch in your brain, then money is really just a game. at that point. It's a game of connections. It's the old classic game of telephone is how many people can I talk to and what is the message that is being spread, and can I ensure that that message is suiting me versus getting distorted somewhere along the way, i.e. losing money. And once you switch into that mindset of it being a mental game, you start looking at your world a little differently. Again, whether this is you as a company, as the business owner, looking at your industry and your clientele differently, like, okay, if all money is connections, I need to now, there's a couple bits of information you just need to know in order to make that. Who has the money? Right? That's probably a good thing to know. How much money do they have? At least generally speaking, you don't need to know their exact bank accounts or anything, but you need to know if I'm a B2B type of business, does that business that I'm connecting with have the wherewithal and the resources in order to pay me for my services? Or am I, selling my offer to broke people that don't have that? I'm connecting with people, but not necessarily connecting with the money that those people have. Does that make sense? Not to sound, untowards or anything about, poor people or anything, but this is a topic about money and our mindset of connecting with it. And once you figure out that game, then it just becomes a matter of making more connections. And how do you scale those connections? How do you make better connections? What are the best methods to connect? Again, it could be personal connections that lead to that. It could be new products and services and offerings, figuring out their pain points and solving those. How do you make those connections? Because that's all money is. Even as an employee, if you can figure out what are the pain points of your boss, what are the pain points of the company that you work for, and how can you solve those pain points in order to create new connections, i.e. in the form of new revenue. And then you become more valuable to the company. You're more connected to your boss, to your supervisor, and you're showing more worth. And then, hey, guess what? You get a raise, or you get a promotion, whatever that looks like. And if you don't, you should be asking for that. Be like, hey, XYZ, I did this and this and this, resulting in X, Y, and Z. I deserve, or I should be getting this. But it also comes down to, and going back to kind of the beginning of this conversation of our mindset of thinking it's such a scarce resource and it's so hard to get, let alone hold on to or make grow. But what limits are you imposing on yourself in the form of how you think about money and how much you can accumulate? And most of these limits go back to our upbringing. It goes back to whatever neighborhood we were raised in, whatever school we went to, and the people we were around at that time as during our developmental years, where we form most of these thoughts about what kind of young man or what kind of young woman you're going to be as you grow into adulthood and start gaining more responsibility for yourself. And you need to take that honest look at yourself of, okay, this is my mindset about money. Yes, money is the scarcest thing, and you'll hear people say this, like, man, it's so hard to make that extra money, or, I can't make my ends meet at the end of the month. And that's a mindset issue because they're not stepping back to realize that there are connections that can be made and should be made in order to increase that income, increase that accumulation of money and wealth. Right. And there, of course, are lots of other variables that go into this. It is hard to make connections with massive amounts of money if you have no skill, if you have no people skills, if you are generally unlikable. That is kind of hard to make those connections. So there are admittedly ancillary variables that go into this, but it starts really with your mindset of just even believing that it's available. Right, I wouldn't hike up to that mountain if I didn't think there was an amazing sunset waiting for me at the end of it. If it was just, looking at some decimated landscape or something that's just not interesting, right? There is a trade-off of, if I don't believe that I'm capable of it, or if I don't believe that the reward at the end of it is worth it, then yes, you're not going to do that. But when we talk about our mindset, putting yourself into it, I am here to tell you, if no one has told you before, there's plenty of money out there. Even during our inflation and a little bit of economic crisis that we're going through right now, there is plenty of money out there for you to get. And your job, your mission, your goal, your kind of driving force in order, if you're wanting to provide for yourself and your family or your business, is to figure out those connections that need to be made in order to find it and connect with it. So that's kind of that thought of how my highest recommendation is how you change your mindset from scarcity, from so difficult to get, to it's really a mental game of, all right, what connections do I need to make with new pathways, new opportunities in order to accumulate that? What services can you provide, products, whatever that looks like for you in order to make those connections. And then ultimately, right, as you increase that, you in turn invest in yourself in order to increase your capability of making more connections or better connections, more quality connections, and all those types of things. And that's certainly for a later topic as we talk about, investing in yourself and things. But I wanted to really kind of put this thought in your brain if it's not already, or this may be the first time you're hearing this because you grew up hardcore. Like, I've never made more than $10 an hour. And even doing that, it took, it was backbreaking work and I'm sacrificing my body for it. Like, understand that there are other ways to do things and other methods. But first, you have to be able to change your mindset to even realize and accept that there are alternatives and that you are capable of doing that. So, and it may require you thinking outside of the box. It may require you to invest in yourself from the get-go in the form of a mentor or a business opportunity, or getting over yourself and your fear of going online or being live, or talking to your neighbor, or even talking to your current boss and asking for that raise that you should have gotten 5 years ago. Whatever that looks like for you, I would highly encourage you to start thinking through that process and figuring out what connections have I missed, what connections are right in front of me, and what connections can I start developing in order to increase that income and get more money. So there's that. I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Thank you for being a subscriber of the show. If you're not, please hit that subscribe button, no matter which platform you're listening or watching on. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon. No matter where you're at in the world, have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.